tide pool is a coastal habitat that is influenced by the tides, meaning that sometimes the rocky habitat is covered in water and sometimes the rocks are exposed, meaning that these little pools are left behind for all kinds of animals to live within. First of all, the Garibaldi is the California state marine fish. It's very recognizable because it is a vibrantly colored animal. It is a bright orange color. And when it's young, it has blue spots all over its body, and those blue spots are a visual cue to other fish that they are juvenile. So once they reach sexual maturity, the blue spots disappear and they are just a bright orange throughout. And this is really important for the youngsters to remain safe because the males, when they're sexually mature, can be very competitive for their space, meaning that they defend that space in hopes that a female will come by, lay her eggs, and then he can fertilize them. The opali is a mid-water fish, meaning that you're going to find it in the middle of the water column. It's not going to be the fastest swimmer at the top, and it's not going to be a lion weight predator at the bottom. They pretty much hang out in the middle. And what's unique about them is that they have a white spot on their back, especially when they're juveniles, and that's considered a false eye spot. Normally when animals have a spot or stripes or any kind of unique coloration, they put those spots or stripes at the widest parts of their body to give the illusion that they're bigger than they really are. So they're trying to look big and tough, but they're really not. And when they're young, they live in the tide pools, but as they mature, they move out to the kelp forest community. So they start their lives eating invertebrates like crabs, crustaceans of all kinds, and then they move out to the kelp forest and start eating algae. So that is a unique trait to opali because most animals don't go from being carnivores to being herbivores, but that animal does it all the time. Sea urchins, they come in a lot of different sizes and varieties. A lot of people are intimidated by urchins because they look like they are super spiny, but people think those spines are going to be so sharp that it, pierces their skin, but that's not the case. Urchins have the spines as a defense, but they stay attached to their bodies. The sea cucumber, they have false spines all over their body. So they're related to urchins and sea stars, and a unique characteristic to that type of animal, the urchins, the sea stars, and the sea cucumber, is that they have rough, spiny skin. And when you touch a sea cucumber, you might be a bit surprised to find out that they're actually very squishy. Their spines are just for looks. They're just trying to appear bigger and more intimidating than they really are. They are very helpful in tideful environments because they are going around and they're sucking up the sediment off of the bottom, and within the sediment there's undigested nutrients and all kinds of things, and they're filtering out those nutrients and essentially pooping out clean sand. It kind of looks like a mop on one end of their mouth, and that is like their vacuum. So it kind of looks like these stringy tube things that pop out, look really frilly. That's what's actually sucking up the sediment on the bottom. An anemone is a jelly that's glued to the ground. So they have very similar lifestyles in that they are stinging their food along the length of their tentacles. They have stinging cells known as nematocysts, and those stinging cells have a little trigger on the end of them. So as they brush up against something, they're stinging you without even thinking about it. It's an automatic response. And it releases a neurotoxin that can immobilize small prey, so small fish, plankton, things like that, and then that becomes a delicious source of food for that anemone. Life is really challenging in a tide pool. Animals, they're encountering changes every few hours in their habitat. So when the tide comes up and recedes every 6 hours, they are having huge changes in their lifestyles. So they have to go from living in cold water to living in warm water if the sun's out and shining. The salinity in their environment is changing. The dissolved oxygen content is changing. They are being harassed from above by birds and harassed from below by other animals, like maybe lobsters are poking around or sea stars are trying to eat them. I think the best thing to remember when going to the tide pools is that these animals are alive. I think a lot of times when people encounter the animals living in a tide pool, they have protection, right? They have shells, they have spines, and they have long antennae. And so because they're different from us and they're different from what you're used to seeing in an aquarium setting, moving fish, things like that, it's really hard to understand that those animals are alive. There needs to be the same level of respect granted to them that we would grant to sea lions or seals or dolphins. Just because their lifestyle is different, just because they cling to a rock instead of swimming freely in the ocean, doesn't mean that they have any less value or importance to the ecosystem. We need to remember that these animals, a lot of them are starting their lives in tide pools and then transitioning out to different ecosystems. So not only are they a vital part of the food chain, they're a vital part of research, and they're also like a really wonderful recreational opportunity for anyone visiting the coast. So I think respect goes a long way.